I'm going to be walking you through my first ever attempts at digital art. Now, I've been working semi-professionally as an artist for the last couple of decades, but were my first goes of it actually any good? So back in 1999, 2000, that is when I first began getting into digital art. And this image is an example of how my process usually went. So I would sketch an image, ink it, scan it. That was always the way to do it. Scan your artwork and then colour it afterwards. The idea of drawing straight onto a tablet wasn't really a thing that happened until like 10, 15 years later, and now it's just mainstream. Everyone just draws straight into the computer. But yeah, I was quite pleased with this. I remember just thinking at the time, okay, here we go, it's Kung Fu Jesus. He's got some sort of typical Western comic book styled colouring, and this sort of level of colouring was almost on a par with comic books of 1999, 2000. So this wasn't actually too far off from considered professional, at least in the colouring side of things. The artwork itself, on the other hand, obviously needs a lot of work, but it gives you an idea of sort of how it all first started off. This, I think, was probably done maybe a year earlier, slightly earlier attempt at digital colouring and anime. So yeah, it wasn't great. As you can see, I'm trying to sort of use a few basic gradients. I don't really know where to put the shadows. I mean, I get the general gist of like some of it, but ultimately the art's pretty poor, the colouring's pretty poor. I mean, at the time I remember still being reasonably happy with this, but it's crazy to think like these days there are now kids that are like 9, 10 years old that they would walk all over this, you know, if it was up to them and they were asked to produce artwork. This was a pencil drawing, I think, from a sketchbook, inked again, and then I would bring this stuff into Photoshop and maybe just like tweak, just put a filter over it, you know, invert it, give it a bit of colouring, and there you go. Now we have a piece of artwork that is kind of digital-ish. So yeah, back then it was a mixture of sort of getting into digital for the first time, still using pencil and paper to initially scan the artwork, and again, very basic. I guess you could say it's not terrible, but then, you know, it's all, you've got to put it into different contexts, and, you know, how do you justify or judge whether something is good or bad? It's kind of subjective to some degree, but also, I suppose at the time, you know, for a 17, 18-year-old, you know, most people weren't even attempting digital art, you know, back in, you know, 2000 or whenever it was. So, you know, you sort of got to give me a little bit of credit. Again, this was some sort of monster design that I ended up painting with acrylic paints, and then again, what I would do is just bring it into some digital, you know, I'd scan it, maybe put a digital background on it, write my name all over it, because I was so proud of what I was doing, even though obviously looking back it's pretty bad. And, you know, that was my first sort of dabblings with digital art. So it wasn't necessarily a case of going straight into it, you know, grabbing myself a graphics tablet, drawing on the computer, producing it all wholly on the computer. It was a bit of a mixture of trying to integrate my previous traditional art skills, if you want to call them skills, with digital art. And I think, like a lot of kids back in the day, it was drawing these like little cute cartoony characters, this one being a little Mog Moogle from the Square Final Fantasy games. And I think this was a Digimon. I can't remember what it was called. Digimon fans might know if there are any kids or even grown-ups that still remember Digimon. But again, it's like, it's okay, you know, it kind of is a thing. I mean, these days you would look at stuff like this and think, okay, yeah, this is obviously, you know, a kid's piece of artwork, but you wouldn't necessarily think it was horrific. But yeah, this was me just putting some colours over it, trying to create some backgrounds. And again, it was all experimentation back then, and trying to figure out, you know, what worked, what looked good, what didn't. I mean, what can we say? It's perhaps not terrible, perhaps also pretty naive, very naive by today's standards. Here we have like a little original version of, I don't know, a Digimon, Pokemon style thing that I came up with. Yeah, actually thinking that, yeah, this is kind of okay, it's not bad. It's all these things back in the day I used to feel quite proud of, but obviously looking back now, I don't feel proud of any of this. But at the same time, it's one of these things where okay, I might not feel proud of these little creatures that I was designing or drawing back in the day, but you know, you've got to go through it. You've got to go through these phases of, you know, drawing these little crappy cartoons, memes that I would do of myself when I was just angry at the computer. And I thought, I don't know, did I think that was funny? I think it was just a way of trying to express myself in some kind of cartoon form, and just thinking, oh, okay, you know, it's something. It's just something that I did. Okay, fan art. We're onto the Lara Croft fan art from 2000 now. So I remember feeling kind of proud of this. It's like, okay, yes, it looks a bit, Lara looks quite masculine, and there's a few issues going on here with proportions and stuff, but it's not bad, it's not far off. You know, you can obviously recognise it's a human being at least. And I remember this was like the first time that I kind of went full on CG character artwork. And I'm thinking, yes, you know what? This is kind of not too bad. The background's using very simple gradients, little lens flare up there in the corner, which was all the rage back in like the early 2000s. Just makes me laugh sometimes looking at this kind of stuff. But I remember posting this online, and you know, a few people have kind of thought, yeah, that's well done, Ben. You've done a good job. And then there was a guy who basically came along and said, you know what, this is how it should be done. I quite like his artwork, and I appreciate that he's sort of taking the time out to just draw the same thing but better. So as always, there's people better than you, and yeah, it's quite good to get feedback from other artists on a better level to try and help you with understanding what you were doing. I don't know whether I looked at this and thought, you know what, I did this and now I know how to make it better. Obviously this is a much more stylized version, but that's the thing. Even if you've got something like this, you can still inspire other people, even artists that are better than you, because you know they might want to come along, show you the error of your ways, make an improvement upon the artwork, and that in it itself is quite a fun little project to do. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend shying away from posting your artwork online, even if you think you're not good enough. I think there's still something useful that can come out of it. Okay, so more video game fan art. Maxi, he was a character from Soul Calibur, I think, or Soul Edge, Soul Blade. I can't even remember now. It's been such a long time ago. But yeah, late 1990s artwork, fan art. Me making use of the smudge tool, finding the smudge tool on some digital package for the first time. I can't remember if at this point I was using Photoshop, or maybe there was some other free digital software I got at the time. But yeah, back in 1999, there wasn't much going on. Like, your software choices were pretty limited. This is a pencil sketch that, again, invert the colours and then consider it digital art. This wasn't digital art, this was just a big pen and ink doodle that I did. Just a big giant doodle. I used to like doing stuff like this just for fun. Then I would scan it in and you know, put it towards my portfolio, I guess you could say. Little character design here. I called him Mr. Remo for some weird unknown reason. Yeah, what can I say? So again, little pencil sketch that I did in a sketchbook, and then I thought, right, let's try and turn this into more of a sort of digital piece. Redrew from a slightly different angle and then tried to do something with it, you know, playing around with colours. Yeah. Then switching to this guy, again, sketchbook, drawn in pencil, scanned in, and then given some sort of colour treatment using the very basic digital filter backgrounds to give it a background, basically. Rackbots. Okay, so we're going back in time a little bit here to 1994. So at this point, I'm, 14 years old, and or about that. And then every so often, I would try and redraw Rackbot. So this version, 1998, a few years later, you can see there's progress upon the first version. So yeah, 4 years later, we've made a bit of progress. And then around 2000, we had the Rackbot head. I got to a point where I was like, okay, I can't be bothered to draw the whole body. So I think what happened was I kind of got better because I would just slow down a lot more and take a bit more time, and that really helped improve my ability at the time. Just a little bit of inking over the top of that one. Here's a character artwork. So the point of this creation was to have an avatar for my personal website, my art portfolio. It's kind of weird because I think that the standard, the bar was really low, obviously 25 years ago. So as long as you had something that was kind of okay, you know, you could consider that, you know, worthy of a portfolio piece. And yeah, I was just dabbling with like different color filters and stuff, creating little avatars. Again, same sort of thing, using the sort of flat cell shaded coloring over the top of a pencil drawing. Yeah, experimenting with like different hues and stuff. It was like early days where I didn't really know what I was doing in some ways. So I would just experiment, try different lightings and things on the character art that I was doing. Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that, yeah, I was maybe just finally like trying to level up the colouring side of things by using the pencil drawings that I'd created at the time. Because I thought, well, you know, I would always drawn in pencil. Now let's see if I can just add on the colouring. And I think back in 2000 when I was doing this, I didn't have a graphics tablet. So all the colouring, like on this one, for example, it was all done just using a mouse. So yeah, you'd have to just move your mouse around and try and colour sort of in between the lines. Don't think anyone does digital art like that these days. I mean, basic drawing and graphics tablets and things like that, you know, it's basically the cost of a expensive mouse. So there's not really any excuse to use computer mice to colour. But yeah, that's what I had to do. I had to use mice because that was all I had, that was all I could afford. And Metal Gear Solid, that was the game that came out in 2000 and I was obsessed with it. Brilliant game. So I would try and sketch Solid Snake and other characters from it, which I would then ink up and then colour. And again, I remember that thinking, like, colouring wise, this is good, you know, it's like Kung Fu Jesus at the start. We've got some of this, you know, this, as they used to call it, shadow conditioning, this sort of blue secondary light source or shadow light that's kind of hitting the side of the character. And that contrast between that kind of, you know, purple blue shadow light and or shadow colour and the sort of skin tone, the warmer skin tones. Like, I didn't really know why it worked, it just did. It just looked good and I was quite pleased with myself for being able to implement that. And this was an example of me collaborating with someone who was obviously far better at the drawing side of things, but I don't think they knew anything about digital colouring or colouring in general. So I was like, oh, let me just take a stab at that and I'll see if I can, you know, colour it up and make it look half decent. And I remember being really proud of it. But even today, like, you could call this as a finished piece of artwork, obviously thanks to the amazing line art, but you could call this a professional piece of artwork. Just, you know, there's a few colouring niggles that, you know, I would obviously improve now, but it's okay for what it is. Tetsuo, anyone watch Akira? Anyone who knows anime has surely watched Akira. It's kind of like a rite of passage. But I was trying Otomo's style with this one. And then what I would do, scan in the artwork, try and add some graphic design elements to it to turn it into a piece of art. So yeah, I remember just being quite enamoured by what computers potentially could do, you know, and sort of, you know, so far as graphics went, and you just didn't have to do everything by hand. You know, you could create colour gradients and patterns and shapes using computers. And this was, at the time, back in the early 2000s, this was a pretty big deal. So then I would just start creating my own graphic arts, I suppose you could say, almost sort of semi-abstract artwork that I was like, okay, maybe if I could just combine these kind of elements, you know, you've then got something which is, you know, you could use it as part of an advertisement campaign, or it just looked kind of cool. And then I'd throw a filter on things and be like, wow, look at that, it looks like glass. Yeah, small things, little things back in the day. And again, this is just me experimenting, trying more of a graphic design approach, just using a bit of typography and some patterns and graphical elements to create an image that just looked nice, looked aesthetic. Because the thing with me, like, as you probably noticed with the different styles and different things going on in this portfolio of old artwork, it's like I liked experimenting with different things. Again, we've got like a really loose pencil sketch of a tree that was then scanned in, coloured digitally, and then I was like, okay, so we've got like this little tree in, I don't know, summer or something. Let's try an autumn/fall version. Let's try a winter version. You know, and you could do that with digital. You could create these different colorways, and we've got a rainy version as well. And it was just so easy, and it blew my mind. You know, I think these days we're expecting, you know, kids are expecting of themselves to be able to create the equivalent of, you know, the Sistine Chapel ceiling, but in digital form. Whereas early 2000s, just to be able to change the hues and the colours of an image, like, it was amazing. And most people didn't even know how to do that. So you kind of felt like you were really on the cutting edge of this new digital technology that was sort of starting to become quite a big mainstream part of the artwork scene. So this guy, original character anime guy with some tattoos, I called him Pie Neck because his sweater jumper thing, sweatshirt, is just like a pie crust. I don't know. I didn't really know exactly how to draw. You know, I'm trying my best here. So you know, you've got to work with what you can. And then finally, we have a bit of old fan art from the series He-Man. This is a character called Orko. And I would say that this is probably the best artwork that I managed to pull off back in the 1999/2000 era when I first started getting into digital art. And even now I look at it and I think, you know what, that's not too far off from being considered, I guess, a professional illustration. Like someone might pay for that. Maybe not that, but you know, if someone wanted an Orko He-Man commission, you know, maybe for some avatar for their YouTube channel, social media page or something, and you gave them this, I think they would say, you know what, that works. I'll pay you money for that. And you know, that was the first taster of doing stuff where I thought, you know what, a lot of this stuff is bad. It's really bad, but there's a few little gems that are starting to emerge where you start to feel like this might be the start of being able to sort of consider yourself a professional. You can kind of see the journey of how I am producing what I am producing now, and how it all kind of began back in the day. And I feel like this is just a long journey, and for some people, you know, 5 to 10 years, and they've gone through the process and are now able to make a full-time career, full-time living out of their art. Perhaps other people, it's going to take them 50 years and they'll never even sell a single painting or a single art print or anything. You know, we're all on our own artistic journeys. I think for me, I'm sort of in that middle ground space where I've obviously had some big successes, but equally I've never quite felt like I've hit my stride and I'm really into this whole thing. And obviously it's not been a full-time endeavour. I've been working on other things during my sort of adult years, but yeah, I'm still doing it. I'm still improving, and I think you can see that, you know, even though some of this stuff, not so great, it just goes to show that you don't have to be amazing from the get-go. You can start out, you know, bad, and then as long as you're comparing against yourself and not the rest of the world, and you can see that level of improvement, that can really help spur you on. And before you know it, you're producing artwork as bad as it objectively might seem, but you're producing artwork which you're proud of, and you almost can't believe that you actually created it. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of artwork I was doing back when I was 17, 18 years old, and when I first started to figure out this whole digital art game and what it was all about. So if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, let me know in the comments, and I'll put some more up in the future. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.